There is a map hanging on the wall of the Situation Room in the White House. It's been there since 1961. It shows the world in Mercator projection. America in the center, flanked by two oceans, surrounded by allies shaded in blue. For 60 years, every president who sat beneath that map understood one thing instinctively. The blue countries are ours. The English-speaking world, Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, that is the inner circle. That is the family. That is the one alliance that never breaks. That map is now a lie. At 3:22 p.m., Greenwich Mean Time today, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stood in the House of Commons. He stood at the dispatch box, the same wooden lectern where Churchill declared war, where Thatcher announced the Falklands, where Blair committed to Iraq, and he said words that no British Prime Minister has ever said about the United States of America. He said, "The United Kingdom will no longer calibrate its economic strategy to accommodate the unpredictability of any single partner, regardless of historical ties." Effective, immediately, Britain is joining the Commonwealth Economic Security Compact alongside Canada and Australia. The chamber went silent. Then it erupted, not in anger, in relief, because the members of Parliament sitting in that room, Conservative and Labour alike, had been watching the same thing you've been watching. They watched Trump threaten Canada. They watched him bully Australia. They watched him blow up the petrodollar. They watched him chase Volkswagen to Ontario, Toyota to Windsor, TSMC to Japan. They watched him alienate every ally who ever stood shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers on a battlefield. And they concluded quietly, reluctantly, with the grim pragmatism that defines British political culture, that the United States under Donald Trump is no longer a partner. It's a hazard. And today, Britain did what Britain has always done when a continental power becomes unstable. It built a wall of water and allies between itself and the chaos, the Commonwealth Economic Security Compact. Let the bureaucratic blandness of that name fool you for exactly 0 seconds. This is the most significant restructuring of the English-speaking world since the Statute of Westminster in 1931. This is Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. 3 of the world's top 10 economies, 3 nuclear-capable nations, 3 members of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, formally agreeing to build an integrated economic resource and financial architecture that functions independently of the United States, not against the United States. Without it, there's a difference, and that difference is a knife. Donald Trump spent 3 years telling the world that America doesn't need allies. Today, the allies agreed with him. They don't need America either. And they just proved it with signatures, contracts, and a financial framework that makes Wall Street look like a regional bank. In the next 45 minutes, I'm going to take you inside the 72 hours of secret negotiations that produced this compact. I'm going to show you the phone call between Trump and Starmer that sources in Downing Street describe as the most catastrophic diplomatic exchange in the history of the special relationship. I'm going to show you the leaked Treasury analysis that proves the City of London is already positioning itself as the financial capital of the post-American world. I'm going to show you why Mark Carney is the architect of everything you're watching, why this compact is his masterpiece, and why the Prime Minister, who once ran the Bank of England, is now running the most sophisticated economic insurgency in modern history. And I'm going to explain why the dollar in your wallet is worth less tonight than it was this morning. You are watching the Anglophile divorce, and America just lost the house, the car, and the dog. Don't look away. Segment 1. The trigger. Rewind 6 days, because this didn't start in London. It started like everything else with Donald Trump's mouth. Last Wednesday, Trump gave an interview to a conservative media outlet where he was asked about the growing alignment between Canada and Australia. His response was not diplomatic. It was not measured. It was Trump. He said, Australia is a nice country, beautiful beaches, but they need us more than we need them. If they want to play footsie with Carney and his little Canada club, that's fine. But when China comes knocking on their door, they better not come crying to us. And the UK Starmer is weak. He's got no spine. Britain used to be great. Now they can't even control their own borders. If they want to join the loser coalition, let them. The loser coalition. He called the United Kingdom, America's oldest and closest ally, a member of the loser coalition on camera in English, broadcast globally. That clip was playing in Downing Street within 40 minutes. Sources say Starmer watched it twice. Then he turned to his foreign secretary and said, "Get me Carney and get me Albanese tonight." By 9 p.m. London time, a three-way secure call was active. Starmer, Carney, and Albanese. 3 leaders, 3 time zones. One conclusion. The call lasted 2 hours and 14 minutes. We don't have the transcript, but we have the outcome. And the outcome is the compact you're looking at today. But the trigger wasn't just the insult. The insult was the catalyst. The fuel had been building for months. 3 weeks before that interview, Trump's trade team had sent Downing Street a set of demands that sources in London describe as colonial in tone and delusional in content. Demand 1. The UK must align its agricultural import standards with US requirements, accepting chlorinated chicken, hormone-treated beef, and genetically modified grain. Britain spent 6 years post-Brexit building its own food safety regime. Trump wanted them to shred it in 30 days. Demand 2. The UK must impose sanctions on any British company doing business with Huawei or any Chinese tech firm. This would affect $34 billion in existing contracts and destroy Britain's 5G rollout timeline. Trump wasn't asking Britain to protect itself from China. He was asking Britain to its own infrastructure to satisfy his foreign policy. Demand 3. The UK must redirect 40% of its North Sea energy exports to the United States at a discounted rate to help Trump lower American gas prices before the midterms. He wanted Britain's oil at a discount to win an election. When Starmer read these demands, he reportedly said to his cabinet, "He thinks we're a gas station with a parliament." A gas station with a parliament. That phrase leaked. It went viral in Westminster. It became the defining frame. And it gave Starr the political cover he needed to do what every British strategic thinker had been whispering about for months. Stop waiting for Washington to become rational. Start building without them. Trump didn't just insult Britain. He insulted Britain while demanding they surrender their sovereignty. He called them losers and then asked them for their lunch money. And Keir Starmer, a man who spent 20 years as a human rights lawyer before entering politics, a man who understands the weight of words and the permanence of contracts, decided that the special relationship was no longer special. It was just expensive. Segment 2. The receipts. We do evidence here. Not rage, not speculation, evidence. Let's look at the receipts. Receipt 1. The Commonwealth Compact details. This isn't a handshake agreement. This isn't a communicate full of warm language and empty commitments. This is an operational framework with legal teeth, financial infrastructure, and a timeline measured in decades, not election cycles. The Commonwealth Economic Security Compact has 4 pillars. Pillar 1, resource integration. Canada and Australia, which together control approximately 38% of the world's uranium, 42% of its lithium, 29% of its cobalt, and 22% of its rare earth processing capacity, will create a unified commodity exchange. Pricing will be set in a basket of Commonwealth currencies: the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, and the British pound, not the US dollar. This is de-dollarization by design. Every barrel of uranium, every ton of lithium, every shipment of cobalt that trades through this exchange weakens the US dollar's grip on global commodity markets. Pillar 2. Financial architecture. The City of London, the largest financial centre in the world by international transaction volume, will serve as the clearing hub for all compact trade. The Bank of England will establish currency swap lines with the Bank of Canada and the Reserve Bank of Australia, allowing trade to flow without touching the US dollar or the American banking system. If you think this sounds abstract, let me translate. This means that three of America's closest allies just built a financial highway that bypasses Wall Street entirely. American banks don't get the fees. American regulators don't get the oversight. American intelligence doesn't get the data. The money flows through London, Ottawa, and Sydney. Washington doesn't even get a CC on the email. Pillar 3. Defense Industrial Coordination. This is the one the Pentagon is panicking about right now. The three nations will coordinate their defense procurement to prioritize compact-sourced materials and compact-produced components. The UK's next-generation Tempest fighter jet components sourced from Canada and Australia, not the United States. Australia's Collins-class submarine replacement, British nuclear technology, Canadian rare earth magnets, Australian steel. No American supply chain involvement required. They're not just trading with each other. They're building weapons without America. Pillar 4. Immigration and talent mobility. Citizens of all three nations will receive expedited work visas and professional credential recognition across the compact. An engineer in Toronto can work in London next month. A mining specialist in Perth can relocate to Montreal within weeks. This creates a talent pool of 110 million people across 3 continents. A pool that American companies will now have to compete against rather than draw from. The compact is structured for 25 years with automatic renewal. 25 years. That means even if the next 5 American presidents are perfectly rational, the architecture is already built, the contracts are signed, and the supply chains are hardened. Trump made a phone call. They built a civilization. Receipt to the Star Trump call. Let's go inside the room. Because what happened on the phone between these two men is the reason the special relationship is now a historical artifact. 2 days after the loser coalition interview, Trump called Starmer. Sources in Downing Street say the call was not requested by London. Trump initiated it, and within the first 3 minutes, it was clear why. He was trying to threaten Starr into backing away from Carney. Trump reportedly opened with, "Kerr, I like you. I think you're a smart guy, but you're making a mistake with Carney. He's a snake. He's trying to build a little empire, and he's using you. If you sign this compact thing, I'm going to have to respond, and you're not going to like my response." Starmer's reply, according to 2 sources with direct knowledge, was measured but devastating. "Mr. President, Britain has signed trade compacts with dozens of nations over the last 200 years. We don't typically seek permission from third parties before doing so. If you have specific concerns about the compact's impact on USOC trade, I'm happy to discuss them through proper diplomatic channels, but I won't be discussing them in the context of threats." Trump escalated. He threatened to impose a 35% tariff on Scotch whisky, Britain's largest food and drink export. He threatened to pull American intelligence cooperation. He threatened to cancel the planned state visit. Starmer reportedly said, "Mr. President, Scotch whisky has survived prohibition, 2 world wars, and Brexit. It will survive your tariff. As for intelligence cooperation, I would remind you that GCHQ is the reason your agencies can read the emails they read. We bring as much to that table as we take. And regarding the state visit, I believe the British people would understand if we postponed until conditions are more conducive to productive dialogue. There was a silence. Then Trump said, "You're going to regret this, Keir. You're going to regret this big time." Starmer's final line, the one that has been circulating through every embassy in the world since it leaked. "Mr. President, the only thing Britain regrets is that this conversation was necessary." The call lasted 9 minutes. By minute 10, Starmer was back on the phone with Carney, confirming Britain's entry into the compact. Trump threatened. Starmer listened, and then Starmer signed anyway. Receipt 3. The market verdict. Money tells the truth that politicians won't. Let's listen. The moment the compact announcement hit the wires, the British pound surged 1.8% against the US dollar. The Canadian dollar strengthened 1.3%. The Australian dollar climbed 2.1%. All three Commonwealth currencies rallied simultaneously against the greenback. Why? Because global capital just identified a new safe harbour. 3 stable democracies. 3 resource-rich economies. 3 nations with independent central banks and rule of law connected by a financial framework that doesn't depend on the mood of one man in Florida. The US dollar index dropped 1.9% in 90 minutes, the largest single-session decline in 6 months. Gold spiked to $2 an ounce. Bitcoin surged 7%. Every alternative store of value rallied because the market is saying with its money that the US dollar is becoming less essential. The S&P 500 lost 2.4% at the open. Financial stocks led the decline. JP Morgan dropped 4.1%. Goldman Sachs dropped 3.8%. Citigroup dropped 5.2%. Why? Because these banks earn billions in fees from international transactions that flow through the US dollar system. If the Commonwealth Compact routes trade through London instead of New York, those fees evaporate. Those profits disappear, and those stock prices reflect the new reality. Meanwhile, the FTSE 100 in London rallied 2.8%. The Toronto Stock Exchange climbed 3.1%. The ASX 200 in Sydney jumped 2.6%. The markets of all 3 compact nations celebrated while the US market bled. The machines are voting, the algorithms are scoring, and the score is Commonwealth 3, America's 0. Receipt 4. The Carney press conference. 40 minutes after Starmer's announcement, Mark Carney held a press conference in Ottawa. He stood at a podium flanked by 3 flags, Canadian, British, and Australian, not American. 3 flags. And the absence of the 4th flag was louder than anything he said, but what he said was devastating enough. Today, 3 nations that share a common language, common legal traditions, and common values have decided to build a common future. This compact is not directed against any nation. It is directed towards stability, predictability, and mutual prosperity. We are not closing doors. We are building a house, and anyone who respects the rules of the house is welcome to visit. Anyone who respects the rules. He's not naming Trump. He doesn't have to. The entire world knows who doesn't respect the rules. The entire world knows who governs by impulse, threatens by tweet, and treats alliances like protection rackets. A reporter asked, "Prime Minister, is this the end of the Western alliance as we know it?" Carney paused. He removed his glasses. He cleaned them slowly, deliberately, and then he put them back on and said, "The Western alliance was built on trust. We are simply relocating trust to where it still exists. Relocating trust. 5 words that redraw the map of the world." He continued, "The United States is a great nation. Its people are our friends. Its history is intertwined with ours. But friendship requires reciprocity, and leadership requires consistency. When those qualities return to Washington, This compact will welcome American partnership. Until then, we will build what needs to be built. He took one more question. Is this personal? Is this about Donald Trump? Carney said, this is about systems, not personalities. Personalities change, systems endure. We are building a system. Then he walked off stage. No drama, no celebration, just a man who has spent his entire career building financial systems, building the most important one of his life. Segment 3. The psychological breakdown. Let me explain why Trump lost the Anglosphere. Because it wasn't an accident. It was inevitable. And it was inevitable because of who he is. Donald Trump's theory of power is extraction. You take, you squeeze, you demand, you threaten. And if the other side doesn't comply, you punish. It is the psychology of a landlord. It is the psychology of a man who grew up in a world where every relationship is a lease agreement and every person is either a tenant or a competitor. This psychology works in environments where the other party has no exit. If you own the only building on the block, you can charge whatever you want. The tenant has nowhere else to go. But Canada has somewhere else to go. Australia has somewhere else to go. Britain has somewhere else to go. They have each other. They have Europe. They have Japan. They have the entire non-American world. Trump kept raising the rent, and one by one the tenants moved out. Not because they wanted to leave, because staying became more expensive than leaving. The tragedy, the real historical generational tragedy, is that Trump didn't have to do this. The Anglosphere was his. It was handed to him. 5 nations bound by language, law, intelligence, and 80 years of shared sacrifice. All he had to do was maintain it. All he had to do was show up, be respectful, honor the agreements, and let the system work. He couldn't do it. He couldn't resist the urge to squeeze, to demand, to dominate. Because dominance is not a strategy for Donald Trump, it is a compulsion. He dominates the way other people breathe automatically, constantly, without thinking. And the world got tired of being dominated. Now look at Mark Carney. Carney is the architect of this new structure, and his psychology is the mirror opposite of Trump's. Carney doesn't extract. He constructs. He doesn't demand loyalty. He demonstrates value. He doesn't threaten consequences. He presents alternatives. When Trump threatened Canada, Carney called Australia. When Trump threatened Australia, Carney called London. When Trump threatened London, the compact was already signed. Every threat Trump made became a recruitment tool for the coalition Carney was building. Carney understood something that Trump's brain is physically incapable of processing. In the 21st century, the most powerful person in the room is not the one who yells the loudest. It's the one everyone else wants to sit next to. Nobody wants to sit next to Trump. They're afraid of what he'll demand. They're afraid of what he'll threaten. They're afraid of the chaos that follows him like a weather system. Everyone wants to sit next to Carney because Carney brings a spreadsheet, a plan, and a handshake that means the same thing tomorrow as it means today. Trump is a hurricane. Carney is a harbor. And today, 3 nations sailed into the harbor and closed the gate. Starr is the final piece. He is the one who surprised everyone because Britain of all nations was supposed to stay loyal to Washington. Britain fought in Iraq for America. Britain fought in Afghanistan for America. Britain opened its intelligence to America like no other nation on earth. The special relationship wasn't just a phrase, it was a doctrine. But Starmer looked at the doctrine and asked a lawyer's question. What are we getting in return? The answer under Trump is threats, insults, and demands. That's not a relationship. That's extortion. And Starmer, the human rights lawyer, the man who spent his career identifying when power is being abused, identified it. And he walked, not with anger, with paperwork. That's how the British do revolutions. They don't storm the Bastille. They file the motion, pass the resolution, and put the kettle on. Segment 4. The cost to you. Let me bring this to your front door, because this isn't happening in marble chambers and diplomatic cables. This is happening in your bank account, your dollar. The US dollar's strength depends on global demand. Global demand depends on the dollar being essential for international trade. If three major economies just built a financial system that trades in pounds, Canadian dollars, and Australian dollars instead of US dollars, global demand for the dollar drops. When demand drops, the dollar weakens. When the dollar weakens, everything you import costs more. Your coffee, your electronics, your medication, the bananas on your kitchen counter, the gas in your car, all of it priced in a dollar that is worth less today than it was yesterday. Your investments. If you own stock in American banks, you're watching money leave. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, they earn billions routing international transactions through the dollar system. If Commonwealth trade bypasses New York, those transaction fees go to London. Your dividend check gets smaller. Your 401k takes a hit. Not because the companies did anything wrong, because the president chased away the customers, your mortgage. When foreign governments and institutions hold fewer dollars, they buy fewer US Treasury bonds. When demand for treasuries drops, yields rise. When yields rise, your mortgage rate rises. The compact just reduced global dollar demand by a measurable margin. That margin translates to basis points on your interest rate. Basis points translate to thousands of dollars over the life of your loan. Trump didn't raise your mortgage rate with a policy. He raised it with his personality. Your job. The United States exports $150 billion in goods and services to the UK, Canada, and Australia combined every year. If these nations prioritize each other's products over American ones, and the compact explicitly encourages this through preferential tariff structures, American exporters lose market share. When exporters lose market share, they cut production. When they cut production, they cut workers. Boeing sells aircraft to all three nations. Caterpillar sells equipment to Australian mines and Canadian construction sites. Procter & Gamble sells consumer goods across the Commonwealth. All of them are now competing against compact-favoured alternatives. Your job might be fine today, but the ground beneath it just shifted your security. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance has survived every geopolitical crisis since 1946. But Five Eyes depends on trust. It depends on the belief that shared intelligence will not be weaponized for political leverage. Trump has already threatened to pull intelligence sharing from Australia. He's already used intelligence access as a bargaining chip with the UK. When you weaponize intelligence, you don't strengthen the alliance, you poison it. If the Five Eyes fractures, if Britain, Canada, and Australia decide to share intelligence with each other, but limit what they share with Washington, American intelligence agencies go partially blind. They lose access to GCHQ's signals capability, which covers half the planet. They lose access to Australia's monitoring stations, which track and Russian submarine movements across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. They lose the connective tissue that makes American intelligence global rather than merely continental. Trump is making America deaf in a world that is getting louder. Segment 5. The Domino Forecast. This is the part where we look forward. And I need you to brace yourself, because every scenario from here is a version of America diminished. Scenario A, the retaliation spiral. Trump wakes up tomorrow and does what he always does. He attacks. He imposes 35% tariffs on Scotch whisky, British automobiles, and Australian wine. He orders a review of all intelligence sharing with compact nations.